let everybody slowly wind back the conversations. The conversations are important though, and we'll be having more of them later. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming today. My name's Alex Arawar. I'm the CEO of Destination Southern Tasmania, and I'd like to welcome you here today to the Cruise Restart Workshop. Before we start, the Tasmanian tourism industry acknowledges the Tasmanian Aboriginal people and their enduring custodianship of Lutruwita, Tasmania. We honour 40,000 years of uninterrupted care, protection and belonging to these islands before the invasion and colonisation of European settlement. As a tourism industry that welcomes visitors to these lands, we acknowledge our responsibility to represent to our visitors Tasmania's deep and complex history, fully, respectfully and truthfully. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people who continue to care for this country today, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. We honour their stories, songs, art and culture, and their aspirations for the future of their people in these lands. And we respectfully ask that tourism be part of that future. So thank you first of all to Ben, Danica, Cassandra and the team at Hadley's Orient Hotel, our ultimate members, for accommodating us today in this glorious venue. We are recording the session today and it will be available via our corporate website later on today, hopefully. In that theme, if you're asking questions during the question time, please stand up and speak loudly. You don't have to shout. And if we're unsure, we'll repeat the question back to you so everybody can hear it through the recording. Thank you to Jill and the Australian Cruise Association and Joel from Cruise Lines International Association and Tourism Tasmania for supporting the event today. Also thanks to Hype TV, Damon Wise and Scene Change for recording the session today. Welcome to many of our members from all around the state, and also from those attending from the THA, the Tasmanian Hospitality Association, who promoted this event as well. Welcome to our board members, Jennifer Bett, Tim Parsons and Dan Aitken. And also I'd like to acknowledge our council partners, the City of Hobart today. And in that vein, I'd like to remind people that the Tasmanian Travel and Information Centre, which plays a critical role in welcoming cruise ship passengers to Hobart, are out with their advertising prospectus. Shameless plug for advertising. And as DST members, you get a 10% or 15% discount on advertising. There you go. Thank you very much. That's recorded forevermore. Cruise is an important sector for the southern regions specifically, with Hobart and Port Arthur being key ports in this area. We know that the benefit is spread across many tourism operators, and many of those tourism operators have been desperate to have the cruise ship market back because it fills up the coffers during the summer season and helps them employ and maintain people all the way through the rest of the year. So it's a really important sector, and if we weren't paying attention over the last couple of years, one thing we have to have learned is that we need market diversification. So we need to ensure that we maximise the opportunity from all markets that are coming to Tasmania, put out our best foot forward, welcome these passengers and maximise that yield and opportunity. And that's as much relevant into the retail and the food and beverage sector as it is into the tourism sector. So today we're here to understand how cruising may have changed over the last couple of years, what's happening globally and how we can prepare to maximise this opportunity. So after the session, we're going to hear, first of all, we're going to hear from a couple of speakers doing a presentation, and then we're going to move to a panel-style discussion, which Jill Abel from the Australian Cruise Association will facilitate and open it up to questions. After that, we're treating you to morning tea in the annex room just afterwards, where we'll be able to network and pick everybody's brains. So who are we listening to today? Me, first of all. I'm pretty much done. Then we're going to hear from Pip Harrison, the Managing Director of Tourism Australia, via a video. Then we're going to introduce Christy Malappa, Industry Relations Manager for Tasmania and Victoria from Tourism Australia. And then hand over to Jill Abel, the CEO of Australian Cruise Association, and I think Joel Katz as well, or just Joel Katz. Sorry about that, Joel. Yeah, there you go. And then we'll move into the panel discussion after that. So if you have any questions, wait to the end of the presentations initially, then we'll have a round of questions there, and then during the panel, we'll have a bit of a free-for-all after that. So without further ado, I'll introduce Pip Harrison from Tourism Australia.
Hi everyone, I hope today's event is going well, and I'm sorry I can't be there to see you all face to face. The past 2 years have been incredibly challenging for our industry, and particularly so for the cruise sector. This week, however, the industry has received some great news, with the federal government announcing the lifting of the ban on cruise ships in Australian waters, and we just can't wait to see cruises return. Prior to COVID, cruise was a multi-billion-dollar industry and a significant part of the visitor economy for many communities around Australia's coastline. Pre-pandemic, there were around 300,000 international visitors cruising in Australia. And we've started to see in other parts of the world that cruising has really bounced back and demand has been going strong. And we anticipate the demand for cruising in Australia will be equally as strong. With international borders now open, our high vaccination rates, natural beauty, reputation for safety and wide open spaces have never been more appealing to consumers. And with travel to Australia on pause for nearly 2 years, at Tourism Australia, we're so excited to be welcoming international visitors back. And we have kicked off campaigns and activations to drive the world's tourism demand back to Australia. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you for your continued hard work, passion and resilience during the pandemic. Each and every one of you is critical to the success of Australian tourism, and I hope to be able to see many of you in person very shortly.
Thank you, Pip. Any questions for Pip? No. Christy, we'll hand over to you.
Hi everyone. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Christy. I've been at TA for nearly 6 years now, and the whole time I've been Industry Relations Manager for Tasmania, but if you feel like you've not met me before, I have just taken back-to-back maternity leaves. So 2 maternity leaves, 3 babies, lots of grey hairs. I'm very excited to be here. So it's nice to get the opportunity to get a night in a hotel and have 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. My job, as I said, at Tourism Australia is the Industry Relations Manager. What that means is I'm the person in between you guys and the federal government, being TA. So my job works 2 ways. It is to let you know what we're doing at Tourism Australia, how you can get involved, about our trade events, about our online portals, all the stats, all the figures, all the information that we've got, letting you guys know what's happening. But also my job is to gather your thoughts and feelings about how things are going, what you guys are up to, new openings, when things have closed, other things like that, and feed that back to my colleagues at Tourism Australia. So I'm kind of like the messenger, jack of all trades, master of none. I'm your point of contact. So if you need anything at all, I've got a stack of cards. They're a bit old school these days. Otherwise, you can just look me up on LinkedIn or send me an email. Okay. For those of you who aren't familiar as to how Tourism Australia fit in the ecosystem of government's bodies, you obviously have Alex in your regional tourism body, and then you have the guys at Tourism Australia, who I'm sure you all know very well as well. Their main remit is to get domestic travellers travelling to Tasmania. They also have some budget for international, but it's mainly domestic focused. Our job at Tourism Australia is wholly internationally focused. We did have a remit to promote domestic tourism when the bushfires happened, and we thought that was the worst thing that was going to happen in 2020. And then obviously we got some practice there at domestic tourism and pushed that through COVID when there was no international tourism and all the borders were closed. So we got that down pat, and just before I got back from maternity leave a couple of weeks ago, we actually stopped that domestic activity. And now we're back to doing what we're good at. Not saying we weren't good at domestic tourism, but we're back to our main focus of international tourism. Yes, so that's how that little ecosystem works. And this is where our key markets are. So we've obviously haven't got a huge amount of money. We can't just market to the world. We have to be specific in the people that we're trying to attract. So we have our key markets. These are the USA, Canada, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, China, Hong Kong, India, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Indonesia, and New Zealand. So Just so you know, all of my stats and figures that you're about to see are all compared to 2019 or from 2019, because we haven't had any stats or figures to be able to put in a graph and show you for the last couple of years. So when we say how much these markets are worth, it's how much these markets were worth in 2019. And that was 9.5 million visitors into Australia, spending $45 billion and supporting our tourism industry, which makes up 1 in 13 of all Australian jobs. Going forward, our focus for the next financial year are across these brand platforms. Brand and marketing, number one. Obviously, brand is the priority for the year ahead as we take on the challenge of reminding the world that Australia is open and ready to welcome travellers back. And that's the intent of our current international campaign. Don't go small, go Australia. Number two is our commercial partnerships with airlines and key distribution partners. It's wonderful for us to have great products, but we need to get people here and tell people about it. So that's why we work with our key distribution partners, being those key big travel agents in market and our airline partners as well. Advocacy and for Mills speaks for itself, getting the right people to experience the right product and be able to tell other people about it. Indigenous sustainability have been a key focus for us for the last couple of years. We'll continue to promote that as a point of difference for Australia. Industry partnerships, that's my job, making sure we're engaged and working with you guys on the grounds, and business events, which obviously is fantastic source of revenue for Australia because we have really long lead times. They're very high yielding and they come throughout the year, not just in peak season. Once again, we have to be targeted with our approach. So the people that we want to come here are the people that are going to spend lots of money. This shows Tourism Australia's approach in 2023 in terms of segments. We'll be focusing on this high-yielding traveller. Australia lends itself very naturally to this group. Our distance means that people invest time and money to get here. High-yielding travellers aren't just luxury lodges, you know, expensive dinners. It's not just that premium product. It includes that premium product, but it's also working holiday makers. They spend more, stay longer, disperse further throughout the country, business events, and of course, cruise passengers as well. We know that if they come here on a cruise, that's their lifetime of that traveller. They may come back again and again. As I said, Australia lends itself very naturally to high-yielding passengers because they have to spend so much time and money to get here in the first place. So it kind of goes hand in hand. This has been a bit of a timeline of the year activity, the calendar year activity. Here you can see that we kicked off the start of the year with a number of activities to attract international visitors back to Australia, particularly following the announcement of international borders reopening to the world. We've had our live side of home activations in key markets like the UK and the USA, and our Go Australia campaign rolling out in other markets like Germany, France, Italy and New Zealand. From our campaign to attract working holiday makers to our Yours to Explore campaign, which first started in Singapore late last year, we continue to ramp up our marketing efforts as travel frictions ease. And this is how things are looking. So across search, capacity bookings and occupancy, we're seeing a recovery in demand. As a proportion of 2019 volumes, once again, searches have hit 70%, capacity 44%, bookings are at 52% and occupancy is at 68%. In short, at this point in time, things are heading in the right direction. However, there's a big shift going on in the world where the predominant conversation is shifting from health concerns to wealth concerns, from the pandemic to the rising cost of living and the implications that has for consumers and businesses alike. The big impact we're seeing within our data is the intersection of the two big barriers, COVID and financial concerns. The blue line shows the decreasing concerns around COVID and the orange is the increasing concern over the cost of travel. It's not that financial concerns have suddenly jumped up, it's more that COVID fears have subsided, but there's a definite shift in consumer sentiment. The big macro headwinds that we're focusing on are the rise in inflation around the world, brought to life across our 15 core markets. The normalising of household savings rates from record highs during the pandemic, and also the rise of oil prices, which has a double whammy effect on travel, increasing the traveller's cost of living and also increasing the cost of flying. But there's still reason to be optimistic. This data shows the difference in perceptions in Australia for those who have and haven't visited. The fact of the matter is that Australia over-delivers on every front. Safety, which is the #1 driver of destination choice, especially in the current climate, goes from 42% to 72% once people have been here and visited. Friendly citizens is up 26 points, natural food and wine is up 30 points, natural beauty up 23 points, our coastal and beaches are up 30 points, and wildlife 25 points. So obviously those big macro trends, there isn't a lot we can do about that. We can't control those big global issues, but there is things that we can keep doing. We can keep driving inbound demand. The fact is that our industry cannot survive on domestic tourism alone. We need to drive international demand, and we need to make up ground on the emerging shortfall. We will keep our laser focus on high-yielding travellers who are less susceptible to inflationary pressures, and keep delivering high-quality experiences. That's your job. Our incredible tourism product was highly competitive before the pandemic, and it will continue to be so in the future too. We need to keep striving to be the best in this space, and we still are. Some other ways that we're showing off product to the world is the National Experience Content Initiative, which is a bit of a mouthful, so we just call it NECI. We've spent the last 12 plus months travelling around the country and filming lots of product. We tried to get the smaller operators who don't necessarily have the means to be able to collect this content themselves. We're making little videos and producing some stills too. We're still in the process of doing that. We had very lofty aims of getting around to 1,300 individual products around the country. We're still going. We've filmed a lot. They're still editing a lot. It'll be great for us to be able to refresh our image and video gallery that has been left for quite a few years, so it's nice to have some new content. And I've got an example of the content that we have here as well.
Hi, I'm Rachel from Guide Falls Farm. We're on the beautiful northwest coast of Tasmania. We're about 13 kilometres south of Burnie, just off the highway on your way to Cradle Mountain. We offer do-it-yourself tours where people can grab a map and go around the farm with their family and just have a bit more of a relaxed pace. And then we do some behind-the-scenes tours where they have a guided tour of our farms and people learn a little bit more about what we do and why we do it. Regenerative farming is really, really good for the soil, the land and the animals, and we run these in a way where it's in line with what nature needs, where we're allowing huge rest periods between the animals being there or grazing through. We have an animal park, we're a fully functioning working farm. You know, we have pigs, a horse, alpaca, cows, lots of chickens, and we recently just added a paddock to plate restaurant to tie in everything we do on the farm and give people this real farm experience when they come up here.
So that's just one of the Tasmanian examples of the content that we've created. We're also working with Tourism Tribe. Once the content has been edited and polished and made to look all nice, we're sending it out to the operators, obviously, for them to use, but also working with Tourism Tribe to mentor those operators as to what to do with the content. We would hate for someone to get a USB of all these amazing images and throw it in their top drawer and never use it again. So we're working, as I said, with Tourism Tribe, who will mentor those operators and make sure that they know the best way to promote themselves using that new collateral. Business events, I mentioned before, we've just come out with a new brand film for business events, and I don't think that business events, whilst they obviously market themselves a lot, I don't think they've come out with a brand film before, so this is a new thing for them, and it's a really cool video, and it shows lots of Tasmanian operators, so I'll give you a look at that as well. Oh, no, I won't. How do I get the video to go? It's there. No? Okay. I will send you the video and you can look at it at a later date, but it's very cool if you're interested in business events. Working holiday makers. So obviously working holiday makers are vitally important. We did a campaign earlier in the year where for people arriving before the 19th of April, they got a fee waived through the Department of Home Affairs, which we promoted, which was great. We're working on more campaigns to attract working holiday makers who I think everyone, you know, even if you hadn't had, if your business doesn't focus on working holiday makers with the labour shortage at the moment, I think everyone's realised how important backpackers are to the whole tourism ecosystem. So we are doing our best to get as many backpackers back to finish their trip that got disturbed during COVID when everyone was told to go home. So that's a big focus of ours as well. And they are most certainly high yielding travellers because, as we keep saying, they stay longer, they disperse further and they spend more. And cruise, obviously extremely important as well, and we're all very excited that this is all kicking back off again. It sounds like it's going to come back bigger and better than before, and Tourism Australia recognises cruise as a key sector within the tourism industry. This sector, as Pip mentioned before, brought up to 300,000 international visitors into the country pre-COVID, many of whom may otherwise have not chosen Australia as a destination. These visitors play a vital role in the visitor economy throughout their pre and post visitation and the accommodation they stay in and the activities they undertake when not on the vessel. We work closely with Jill and Joel at ACA and CLEAR on a number of initiatives. From general marketing and a PR point of view, we're all about using our platform to tell the story of some of those more unique and iconic cruise itineraries. We also support the research into the significance of the sector, such as current work on quantifying the impact of pre and post visitation, which is obviously something that's really hard to get some data on. Also trying to look at those people who might come here for one day on a cruise, but then decide they want to come back and stay for longer. Getting those stats and figures is something that's quite difficult. So we're working with Tourism Research Australia and our research team in-house to see how we can quantify that and get all of those stats. From an industry event perspective, we support CLEAR in their attendance at the global cruise events such as Sea Trade, and then from the distribution side of things, we're supporting through initiatives such as the cruise-specific module in the Aussie Specialist Program. Okay, what does all of this mean for you, and how can you incorporate all that stuff that I've just said into your everyday business? The first stop is the TA's corporate website. So it's tourism.australia.com. There is so much information. There's probably a little bit too much information on this website. It can be a little bit daunting. I'll talk you through some of the sections of it, and if you get lost, email me and I'll send you the link for what you're looking for, because as I said, it probably needs a bit of a clean out, to be honest. Research and insights. We get all of that TRA data, all the data from the Department of Home Affairs and all the other really boring government departments who send out spreadsheets, and we try to make them look pretty and easy to read. So this is interactive, all the research and stats, so you can drill down and just get the national figures or the figures for Tasmania or the figures for your region. It's all about who's coming and going. Obviously, not many people have been coming and going for the last few years, so it probably compares everything to 2019, but this is where you get all of your stats. There's also PDFs in there on market segments and profiles, either by nationality or sectors. So once again, they're all a bit out of date at the moment. We're waiting to get enough data to be able to update all of that, but that's where you go to get your stats. If you get lost, I get lost sometimes, just email me and I'll send you the link of what you're looking for. The Aussie Specialist Program is how we train our travel agents overseas. All the travel agents around the world, obviously all haven't been to Australia, yet it's their job to sell Australia. So this is how we train them to let them know there is no bridge to Tasmania and that they need more than a day to drive across the Nullarbor. Sounds silly. But you get some odd questions. There is 35,000 frontline travel agents that are trained on this program. In some travel agencies, the likes of Flight Centre, when you get employed, it's part of your induction to complete this program. So there's ways to get involved in that as well. You can upload deals for those travel agents when they are in Australia to experience your product. And there's a few different ways They get a newsletter every month as well. You can get involved in putting some content in those newsletters and bits and pieces. If you want more information, let me know. Trade events. Obviously, there is lots of events throughout the year. Our big signature event is the Australian Tourism Exchange, which was just on a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago now, in Sydney. Our Australian Tourism Exchange next year is on the Gold Coast, and then we have trade events in market as well. We've got North America Marketplace coming up, Japan, South Korea, and UK, Europe towards the end of the year. International Media Hosting Program, we have an IMHP team whose job is to host journalists on FMILS, journalism media people on FMILS in Australia. If you're interested in hosting or would like some more information on the media hosting program, let me know. There's generally, in a normal year, 2019 again, there was over 1,000 people hosted on the IMHP program. So they are interested in not just staying in premium products, they stay in all types of accommodation and experience all types of activities throughout Australia. It's not just bridge climbs and helicopters over the reef, it's everything in between. And Australia.com is our consumer website. So this is if you're a foreign tourist and you want to find out information about Australia, you go to www.australia.com. And this is our website. It's multilingual. It's got all information that you would need as an international visitor on Australia. You feature already on this website if you have an up-to-date Australian Tourism Data Warehouse listing. If you don't know what that is, then you are not on this website. Or if you think you might know what this is and you haven't looked at it for a really long time, you need to log in and make sure all of your details are up to date. Because if you do, that means that you appear on this website, on Tourism Tasmania's website, and it is really important to make sure that you're there top of mind to our international travellers. And that's enough of my voice. Please do keep in touch. Email me, send me a message in any way. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. It comes out every week. It's called Essentials. And that way you can keep up with everything that's going on at Tourism Australia. You'll be reminded when to register for events, and it's just generally a good newsletter to know what's going on. And that's the end of my story. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christy, and thank you to Tourism Australia for supporting the Australian Cruise Association and Cruise Lines International Association in delivering these events. As Christy said, before COVID, Cruise delivered around 300,000 international visitors to Australia, which really makes it one of the key sectors. If it was a country, it would be up there in the top 10 countries delivering visitors to Australia. So very important for Australia and very important for businesses around the country. So my name is Joel Katz. I'm the Managing Director of Cruise Lines International Association. We are the, I'll just jump ahead to the correct slide. Yeah. We are the Industry Trade Association. So we have, as our members, around 95% of global cruise capacity. That's pretty much every cruise brand whose name you recognise would be a member of CLIA. And our role is really to promote, educate and advocate on behalf of the industry. And we work closely with our partner associations like the Australian Cruise Association, like Tourism Australia, the regional tourism organisations, the state tourism organisations, to really explain why cruising is beneficial to businesses and to regions and countries around the world. Our vision really is for the industry to be recognised as a leader in responsible tourism. So while we do have, in some cases, ships which are quite large, and you know, when you've got a big ship sitting in the middle of Hobart, everybody knows there's a ship in that day. We are actually a very, very small part of global maritime, and we're a very, very small part, about 1% of global tourism. So we, pre-COVID, were carrying 30 million passengers a year. I think globally there's something like 4 billion international tourists. So it's very important that we are able to communicate effectively with stakeholders, with businesses, with the community about the role that cruise can play and about the impact that cruise has, both positive and negative, and being able to address those concerns so that everybody is informed and can understand the impacts. So our vision is for cruise to be recognised as a responsible leader in travel, but also an amazing way to see the world. One of the projects that we work with very closely with Jill at the Australian Cruise Association is to deliver an annual economic impact report. And I thought it may be just useful just to give you a quick snapshot of some of those Australian figures, because I think people sometimes are surprised at the scale of the cruise industry in Australia and how important it is to the economy, as we heard Pip say in that video. So in our last economic impact study, which was 2019, we saw that a significant part of cruises' contribution really came out of the expenditure by the passengers, by the crew, and of course by the cruise lines. In the last full year of operation, there were 1,240 cruise ship visits right around the country, so not a huge number, but what they delivered was 3.8 million passenger visit days to communities around the country. So that is a significant number of people spending money in communities. And the direct expenditure from those travellers was around $2.5 billion. So that's not the economic output, which is those multiplier effects that economists talk about. That's actual passengers and crews spending money in communities. And really, the accommodation sector was the biggest beneficiary from that, almost $500 million spent in hotels around Australia. Next was the food and beverage sector, about $250 million. Then transport, so tour operators, taxis, other forms of transport, around $200 million. Retail, $160 million. Shore excursions, which I know a lot of you are interested in, $140 million. So really a significant amount of money each year directly into the economy. We know that so many of these businesses have been doing it tough over the last 2 years. So this really, the resumption of cruising really is a light at the end of the tunnel for so many businesses and communities. And our ability to do that in a carefully managed, responsible and safe way is critical to the success of so many businesses. That was just my introduction. So what is, let's have a look at what's happening around the world, just to give you a sense of where we are. So this slide is actually a little bit out of date. Since we presented this slide, was it 8 weeks ago, when it was 12 million, we're up to 17 million passengers have sailed now. Obviously in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going into summer, so it's really busy. Around 100 countries around the world are open to cruise, and we're currently at about 88 to 90% of global capacity back in service, and by the end of July, we'll be at 95% of global capacity. Obviously, in the Southern Hemisphere, we're in winter, so it's much more of a slow, gradual restart. We have 3 international ships now operating in the Northern Territory in Western Australia, along with the 2 local operators. We've got 2 larger ships, P&O and Princess, who are operating on the East Coast. And the exciting news was the next P&O ship just left Europe in the last 24 hours and is starting to head down towards Australia. So it's going to be a gradual restart through the summer as we get towards the spring. But we're really expecting that this year, while it may not be at 100% of where we were before COVID, it's certainly going to be a busy cruise year and a real opportunity for so many businesses around the country. So how have what's underpinned this restart? Really, we all know that in the beginning of the pandemic, there were some very high-profile cases on board cruise ships. And, just like every other sector, the cruise industry was learning as much as they could, as quickly as they could, about how this virus worked. We know this virus has flourished in social settings, and it's really social settings that makes cruising so popular. So we really focused at a very, very early stage to work with medical experts, epidemiologists, to understand how do we mitigate the risks of COVID on board cruise ships. And I think that the success of the resumption has really demonstrated that we've been able to do that. So it's about a layered approach. So the first thing is making sure that we can do everything we can to keep the virus off the ships. We know that everybody's realistic, and we know that there is no setting these days where there is no COVID. So there will be COVID cases on board ships, but how do we do everything we can to keep that to a minimum? So that means we have a vaccination policy, we have testing, we have health screening, and we have really robust communication with passengers so that they understand what the expectations will be of them when they're on board the ships and in the destinations that they're going to be visiting. Then once you get on board the ship, it's really about mitigation. So making sure that we have the processes, the public health measures that we're all used to in place on board the ship. So if you can't social distance, wear a mask. Wash your hand. For those of you that have cruised, you'll know that cruise ships have always had this tradition of, as you go into a dining room, you're asked to sanitize your hands. That's obviously been ramped up even further. Making sure that, and in fact, we were laughing. A few of us did the activation cruise on board Pacific Explorer before she started her commercial sailings in Australia a few weeks ago. And we were laughing because there are actually, the protocols on board the ship have actually now gone beyond what we're seeing on land. Because as we all know, on land things are relaxing and people are getting used to living with COVID and some of those restrictions have been relaxed. But actually on board the ships, they're still very vigilant and making sure. So if you get up from a table in the restaurant, for example, on board Pacific Explorer, they're putting a card on the table to say, please don't use this table. They're spraying it with a disinfectant, and the table stands empty for a few minutes before the next party is allowed to sit down at the table. Where else in society today are we seeing those kinds of measures? And in fact, that is really reflected in the response that we're seeing to the cruise ships returning and the booking pace. And I'll address the sentiment in a second. The other thing is, obviously, as I said, no setting is immune. So really making sure that we have the response plans in place to be able to deal with any cases. So that means having the isolation cabins. All the ships have the ability to test. Everybody's encouraged, if they have symptoms, to present to the medical facilities so that they can isolate and that everybody can have an amazing time. And I think Mike made the comment, and I'll steal his thunder by quoting him before he has a chance to say it himself, is that notwithstanding the additional level of protocols, it is still the same incredible experience that it was before COVID. Actually, one other point which I keep forgetting is that we've just seen some research come out of Europe, and some researchers did a study of the serious illness and hospitalizations on cruise ships in the US over the Omicron period, which we all know was very, very virulent, I suppose. And it was really interesting to see that the number of cases, serious cases and hospitalizations on board ships was 80 times lower than it was on land. And that's because of this heavy level of vaccination and testing. And that really is translating into the sentiment. So we're seeing that 84% of cruisers indicated that they would cruise again, which is higher than it was before COVID. And even more importantly, the percentage of new to cruise, so those are people who haven't cruised before but are interested in cruising, that percentage has gone up. And we really think that that's driven by two things. One, by the fact that cruising is seen as this safe environment. You're cruising with people like yourself who are vaccinated and tested. So it's we're trying to use the bubble word, but it's like a bubble environment. And more importantly, for those of you that have traveled internationally or even domestically, traveling is very stressful and complex at the moment. So people realize that cruise lines really go out of their way to look after them, to make sure that it's a seamless experience. And in fact, travel agents are echoing that and really encouraging people to take cruises because it is such let's say, a painless way to travel in the current complex world that we live in. And it's not only about the COVID challenges. We know it's the war in Ukraine, it's the fuel prices, it's the cost of fresh produce and everything else. So really, the restart of cruising is really encouraging and is really an enormous opportunity for small businesses. And what that really means is that as we move forward, we're seeing that very quickly we're going to get back to that pre-COVID trajectory of growth. We've got around 75 ships on order. As I mentioned, we're a very small part of global maritime. I think we've got about 300 odd ships, 350 odd ships in the overall cruise inventory. So 75 ships is a significant growth. Before COVID, we were on track to go from 30 million passengers in 2019 to 40 million in 2030. Even on the downside, we're expecting that by 23-24 we'll be back to that growth trajectory, and we'll be on track to bring those new ships into the fleet and be able to deliver. And what's really interesting, and again we'll talk about that a little bit later when the panel has the discussion, is it's a combination of both the larger ships but also the smaller ships. As we all know, people there's this tendency for people to seek more authentic, experiential type of experiences, I suppose, and cruising really has the ability to deliver that. It would be remiss of me to be up here talking about the restart of cruising without mentioning what the industry is doing around sustainability and environmental activities. So just recently, as an industry, 2 years ago, we committed to a 40% reduction in carbon by 2030. We've just, echoing what many of the governments around the world have committed to, we've now committed as an industry to zero carbon by 2050. And we're doing a lot of work with governments around the world, with scientists, with engine manufacturers, to really understand how do we get to that 2050 net zero position. Excuse me. So the first pillar of our sustainability commitment is really about decarbonisation and how do we get there. And that's everything. So there's transitional activities like moving to LNG, investing in shore power, to really take action as soon as we can. And then there are those longer term goals, which is to really replace fossil fuels with hybrid technologies, with hydrogen and other mechanisms to get to that position. I think if any of us knew how to do that today, we'd all be billionaires. So it is a very much a project that the industry has committed to. And although we're such a small part of maritime, we are taking a leading role in that global maritime industry to deliver those commitments. The second pillar is really around the environmental technologies on board. And that's things like recycling, not using plastics, wastewater treatment. And it's really encouraging to see that cruise lines we have cruise line members who are zero plastic operations. Even not only on board the ship, but things are being delivered without plastic. So there is no plastic coming into the ship's ecosystem. In terms of recycling, some of the ships are doing 100% recycling, which means they're actually recycling at a higher rate per person on board the ship than many of the communities that they're actually visiting. So all really important steps forward in the process. And then the third pillar, of course, which is particularly of interest to, I think, everybody in this room, is around our destination management and our destination partnerships. Because at the end of the day, we want our communities that we visit to be better off for the ships having visited them than if we hadn't visited. So we've all heard the media reports around Barcelona, Dubrovnik, Venice, cities where they have real tourism issues. So they have many, many more tourists than they're able to accommodate as destinations. And while cruise may only be a very small part of that, we are a very important part of the discussion in those communities about how we can work with the communities, work with the local governments, work with the destinations to make sure that we're putting as little pressure as possible on the community and getting the balance right between the economic impact and the destination sustainability. Because we all know businesses want to earn money, but at the same time, we want to protect those destinations. As an industry, we rely on the oceans to sustain our business, and we rely on the destinations we visit to be a very important part of our operations. So they are very important parts of our focus and our commitments. One of my colleagues used a phrase recently, which was cruise tourism is managed tourism. And I think that's a very important message. So cruise lines plan 2-3 years. I mean, put aside the current environment, but under normal circumstances, they're planning 2-3 years in advance. So businesses know that that core-based business is going to be coming 2-3 years before it actually arrives. So that's a really important concept, I think, for people to appreciate, and it really provides a base level of business that people can rely on. I'll stop talking now. If you're interested in sort of any more information around anything that we've mentioned, the economic impact or some of these environmental reports that we have on our website, please go to cruising.org.au and have a look. Otherwise, reach out to us at CLIA, and we're happy to share any information with you. Thank you.